Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Cahill with Emerson, and I'm the social marketing leader for our company, which means I basically work with all our business units and our world area people to advance the Emerson brand and the brands of our people using social marketing. So today I'm going to share a couple tips on either if you're getting started or maybe you've started and you want to take it up a notch, and we'll talk about different ways and what you can do and how difficult it is, and hopefully give you enough to take that next step in whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. I always like to start out with why. So why social marketing at all? Whether maybe you're not doing anything on that front, maybe it's very minimal. Some of the things that I look at from our perspective here is first, and I think most important, it really shrinks that distance between customers and prospective customers and your organization. Traditionally, there was a path in through sales and trying to get it to the right people to be able to respond to whatever that issue or challenge is. But more and more people want to be able to get somewhere very quickly and get to the right person and advance whatever their cause is. And by enabling your people and through your brands for people to reach out and connect, it'll shrink that distance and allow people to get in much quicker. It's also a mechanism to be able to build personal brands for your experts and your overall company reputation. And I think as we're going through this demographic shift, it helps appeal to younger audiences that are digital natives and have been working with the various social platforms and are comfortable with them. So more and more we're in that transition where it's just a natural form of communications. You can increase your customer support and loyalty based on some of the things you're doing by giving a more easy voice and being able to respond more quickly to things. And you spend a lot of time and energy on some of the marketing things you do, whether they're articles or white papers or videos or other things. And social marketing allows you to extend that reach and amplify some of that content through different channels. And because it's a two-way medium, you can optimize your communications based on how people are responding to it. Are they ignoring it? Then maybe you should spend less time doing it. If they're highly engaged in something you've come out with, maybe you need to do more of that. So you get that kind of feedback to optimize the things you're doing and make sure it's doing what you need to do to accomplish your objectives. There's a agency, Edelman, that puts out a yearly trust barometer, and I circled the left side of it because what people find most valuable in a business-to-business context are your experts, or experts in an academic setting, or people like you, or your salespeople, people like them, maybe fellow engineers, fellow specialists in there, and employees. And it's much more important to people today than it used to be, where maybe they look to the leaders of companies or people in different places in there. So social marketing is a way to get those experts out there. And if you see the little circles, company technical expert +3 year over year, academic expert +3. So people really do want a faster path to your experts to solve whatever it is before them, get answers, and be able to help you drive business from being able to do that. Now, like most other initiatives within your company, it starts with those objectives. And all our companies a little bit different. We have different challenges, different objectives of things we're trying to accomplish. I tried to list out a couple of them, and it may start with building thought leadership or reputation for your company or the people within your company. Increase overall brand awareness if that brand isn't among the leaders and what people are looking for. People are using social marketing to drive sales and social selling, especially as we're in the COVID era where the face-to-face opportunities have been reduced over the last couple of years. Social provides an alternative way for people to be able to do that. And we mentioned earlier customer service, customer loyalty through communities, and we'll talk about some of that later, a way for people to self-serve and also connect with other people in your organization and maybe other customers, how to kind of questions, ask each other that. If you're already doing several forms of communication, social provides yet another path to go out and maybe reach people that you're not reaching through the traditional channels you're communicating through. And because, again, it's a two-way communications medium, that you can listen, get feedback, and make improvements based upon what you're hearing back through the various social channels. And if you look at a lot of the platforms out there like LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, some of the others, there's no charge to you unless you're paying for advertising through some of those platforms. So that enables a way to improve communications, budget efficiency in all. So one or more of those may be some of the objectives of what you're trying to accomplish. So that's always the starting spot. Then with that, basically defining your social marketing strategy as part of your overall marketing strategy. What objectives are we seeking to address, and how will we define success? What kind of growth do we want to see, or for whatever one, what are some of those measurements? And then it's very important to understand who exactly are we trying to reach, because that'll affect the decisions you make on the different ways that you might want to communicate, the different social platforms that are available to you. And then from that, once you understand that target audience, what's the best way to reach them to achieve those objectives that you've set out, and how do we measure the progress along the way? So we'll explore all of those in the next part of this presentation. A really, really important part, if you have some clear objectives and you understand your audience and trying to get there, who is it that's going to drive your efforts? And it could start out being a single person and scale from there. Like using Emerson as an example, I started a blog way back in 2006, and I was trying to lift the visibility of our experts. That was the key objective of doing that. So we basically started with a single person and have grown it over time to people in our business units, in our world areas, and a team of listeners and people who manage the communication now through the brands in there. But it's very important, if you're going to go down this path, social marketing is unlike your website, which may be more project driven to get it the way you want and then periodically updating it. Social is much more involved in continuous flow of information from different sources out there. So it's a very people-driven thing. And as I look at what are some of the characteristics that maybe I saw in myself and people that participate through our organization, that you want people that are positive, optimistic outlook in there, have a natural creative bent. Things are changing, and we're in an ever-changing world. Being curious about what's out there, what were we doing yesterday that maybe we need to do differently tomorrow, and being willing to try different things. And a big part of it is being consistent and persistent. You don't succeed if you blast out a bunch of stuff and go silent for a month or a month and a half, and you want something ongoing. And we'll talk about some ways to deal with that. And brevity is a key thing, whether it's a blog post or a tweet or a LinkedIn post, to be very clear and concise in there, to as much provide the headline and attract people to it, and have the link to go where they can get more. And then as you're trying to scale it, you want person or people that engage well with people throughout your organization, and encouraging, especially in the case where maybe you want your employees to also have a voice out there and be sharing things about your company and some of the things that you're doing there. So got to think about that people side. Now, in the rest, we're going to look at the various social marketing platforms, and up at the top is LinkedIn, because that's probably the big number one for business to business communications. And everyone should have a company page that's active, but LinkedIn has other things like showcase pages. If you want to showcase by industry or maybe application area or brands within your company, you have the ability to do that and set out. There's also product pages to be able to do that. And then recently, over the last year, maybe 2 years in there, they've added the ability to do live presentations and events through it. And it's a powerful platform, as we'll talk about. YouTube is another one. We put it in social, but it's as much a content delivery network as anything else, but a very important means of your digital footprint and things that you have out there for people to find and engage with. Twitter has historically been very good for, you can company, brand, products, services, solutions, even your people in your company can have Twitter. Facebook is another one. The mix in demographics a little bit different from Twitter, but they've been two pretty common ones over the last couple years. A blog, as I mentioned, we started with a blog in there. So that's an opportunity. Podcasts are another way. Reach people through non-traditional ways during their drive time or exercise, or non-traditional ways of communicating in their communities, especially as you look at maybe customer support or loyalty things in there. That's important. And if you're trying to get more voices, your expert, other people out there looking at these employee advocacy platforms where you can provide your people curated content. So they're sharing things about your company, what's going on in the industry, regulatory things, a lot of things in there. And then a couple of the ones that more recently have come on the scene, and we won't really address in this presentation. Instagram, TikTok, WeChat is a very regional thing, especially for China. Pinterest, Snapchat. So a lot of different ones out there, and you may have unique objectives where you want to take a closer look at them. But I put them in the list, but we won't really talk about that much further from here. Let's start with the LinkedIn company page. And with all of these, I tried to put it in, what are they best for? What are some of the pros about them? What are the cons? Put a little picture in the top right of our example of our company. So there's the Emerson Automation Solutions LinkedIn company page. And then bottom right, just my impression on the degree of difficulty of managing it. So I guess relative to some of the other things, I put this in the easier category from a degree of difficulty. But let's start. It's best for promoting thought leadership and reputation content. Either your people through long form LinkedIn posts that you can promote on the company page, or articles or other things in there to be able to make it available. And it's very good for increasing company brand awareness. If you Google your company name and if you've been active at all with it, the LinkedIn company page shows up there, probably right up there with your website in there. So it's another way to build company brand awareness. Visibility and reach of your content, whether it's been an article, a video, or whatever, you can promote it through your LinkedIn company page. It's free unless you get some digital advertising to go along with it to try to specifically reach other people. And because it allows two-way communications, it is a path for people to respond to your content. And for the pros, it's typically the most highly followed social channel. So as I look across all the different social properties we have, our LinkedIn company page is by far the one with the most followers. It's really good ways to segment around geography, language, industry, demographic, titles. Very good for that. So you can target specific posts in a lot of different ways. And if it's a really key initiative, then you can purchase advertising to reach people who aren't following your page in there. And again, all that targeting is very good. It comes for free, so no out-of-pocket expenses. They've added some things recently where if you've got a piece of content that you've shared on your company page, there's a notify employees that will make it available when the employee's looking at their own LinkedIn page that it's out there, so you can get a little boost through your employees sharing it. And it also supports, we mentioned the live in there, but also you can post videos natively in there, and they seem to do better than maybe providing a YouTube link and going that way. So it's a good way, and something we like to do is also post some of our videos natively in LinkedIn. I'd say the biggest cons are, I think, a lot because face-to-face selling and events and other things have gone in there, that I see a lot more people hard selling and other things. And I think to whatever extent that is, that can discourage some of our customers and prospective customers from going to LinkedIn maybe as much as they did in the past. And I don't know if LinkedIn or Microsoft, who owns them, is looking to do anything about that. But I think that's a caution of it. But as we look at our numbers, we still see very good engagement of people in there. They have some parts to it, like LinkedIn groups that aren't connected to the company page, and they seem to come in favor and go out of favor with LinkedIn. So it's one of the cons is what's working today for you, they may change their mind on something and how that works for it. And I guess the last thing, there's some analytics and you can get an idea of how popular or engaged your posts are. But beyond LinkedIn, if you're trying to understand your people and the things they're sharing, you have no visibility at all to that. So overall with it, I think the pros outweigh the cons. And if you're going to do anything, I would put, more than just having a company page, being active and posting to it to some extent. If I did nothing else, I would do this, and hopefully many of you are already doing that. Okay, let's look at YouTube, and I'm going to include in there's private video services like Brightcove and others, and they help with areas of the world like China or something else that may not allow YouTube videos in there. And basically the video medium is very good for brand awareness. Depending on the types of videos you're doing, you could be building thought leadership in areas like, say, sustainability or cybersecurity or whatever that might be, and doing that in the video form is very good. There's a lot of flexibility. So depending on, again, back to your objectives, through the whole buyer's journey, from the upfront learning about something to after they already own the video and a how-to video of working with your products, video is a very flexible format for that. And again, that provides a great way for customer service and loyalty. And if you're using YouTube, the price is right. You don't pay for to post videos in that way. And some of the pros are, it's very findable in search, and Google owns them. And the Google or the YouTube search engine is the second highest used in the world, only behind the regular Google search engine. So it provides great findability for your content there. Also with YouTube, it's flexible and it allows, you can embed the videos on your website. If you have a blog, you can put them in social posts in LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook. If you have an online community, be able to put it there. So it's very flexible. They don't have to go to your YouTube page. You can bring the video to a lot of your other digital properties in there. And what you see in video is typically, as we look at it, get higher levels of engagement, people clicking to start it or having comments about it or resharing it or all those things that you can do. Videos seem to perform well. Now, the reason I have it in the red content, unless you're just posting videos from cell phone straight to it, that's pretty easy. But if you're trying to make sure it fits your company brand and everything about it, then you want it professionally edited. And so making videos, especially in the context of keeping it within your brand guidelines and everything else, it's just a process to do, and it's more difficult than other forms of communication. So that's a con, and that makes it a high degree of difficulty. And it's not flexible. One thing, with some of the companies, and as they acquire ones and there's different channels and trying to merge them, there's no clean, easy way to do that. You basically have to manually move videos, manually close things down, lose all the links and search stuff you had for them. So just for companies where things are a little more complex, because you don't pay for the use of YouTube, it's not so helpful if you're trying to keep things organized with your company. But overall, although it's difficult, it's a powerful medium to communicate by video, and platforms like YouTube, or if you have a private service, Brightcove or some other else, the ability to locate that in a lot of different spaces on your digital platform, you can do that. Okay, Twitter. I would say Twitter, some of the things it's best for: customer service, monitoring your brands. If somebody's got a problem, they may reach out on Twitter, and you have a way to get in and engage and directly communicate and everything else. It's a good way to, when you have some new content or an event or something else, to be able to share it through Twitter and have it reach a lot of people. Typically tied very well with PR, because what you find is a lot of the people in the trade press or analyst community, they're in Twitter. So it's a way for them to see the things that are going on in your company and engage with it. And it's another way to amplify. We tend to see pretty high click-throughs of people that when you promote or put a tweet out there with a link in it, that a lot of people click through to that link. So some of the pros, again, another freebie, unless you're doing Twitter advertising. there's tools like Hootsuite and others where you can build a listening dashboard, different columns listening for different things, whether they be hashtags around events or key ones used in our industry, like hashtag PAuto for process automation, or other things, to have that dashboard quickly look and see what's going on. It's a great way to listen there. It's easy in the sense that it's not really a place you're creating content, it's a place you're sharing it, a link and a little blurb about why, almost like a headline of why click through to that link. They got a very nice mobile app, Twitter. There's a lot of things you can auto-publish. So from a blog or a community, if somebody posts something new on a blog post or in a community, it can automatically be tweeted out to there. And like LinkedIn, it also supports native video posting, which seems to give it a little more oomph over just YouTube. On the con side of it, there really isn't any geographic, demographic, language type targeting that you can do. In organic posts, if you advertise, then you have some of that, but not nearly what's available in LinkedIn. Click-throughs are higher than other platforms like LinkedIn, but other forms are typically lower. And I would say if you look at where your prospective customers and your customers are, it's not as much in Twitter as it would be in LinkedIn. What you tend to find much more are people that create content. So that includes the trade press, the analyst community, industry press community, because they're creating content. So it more may help you from a PR and making sure that the people that may be writing about you are aware of the things that you're doing. And also, as things seem to have gotten more political with political campaigns and other things, a lot of people have opted out to not go there anymore. So we've seen a downward trend in views and engagement, I'd say over the last 2 years or something like that. So you may or may not see that. And as far as a degree of difficulty, I moved it from the green to the yellow, mainly because Twitter is much more of a stream than LinkedIn or even Facebook, where the flow is so great and going, it almost requires you to increase the amount of postings you do relative to the other one. And so for that reason, I put it up above LinkedIn, where LinkedIn, maybe you do, I don't know, say 5, maybe 10 posts in a week. Twitter would be more, you're doing several every day in there. So you may be 20 or more in there. So it just requires a bit more effort of whomever is identifying the things that you would be posting out through that medium. Okay, Facebook, much like Twitter, there's a lot of commonality: customer service, branding, PR, and promotion, very similar to what we saw with Twitter. No out of pocket unless you're advertising on the platform. It does have the ability to target, not as extensive as LinkedIn, but better than Twitter for your organic posts, the non-paid posts that you have. And it's another one where you're not as much creating content, you're linking to existing content, unless you're posting video, and it also supports native video. And for whatever reason, that does seem to be more engaging than just linking to a YouTube video. Facebook has a very good mobile interface, and it does support the native video posting there. I think the cons are that the perception has always been it's much more about your family and friends and social sites, although we see a fair level of activity in there. It also, much more than LinkedIn, depending on the industry or whatever else, it's more prone to negative comments, in areas maybe energy, biotechnology, and other kind of things, just based on, I think, the audience mix and others. So that's something you've got to be cognizant of and prepared for, much more than you would see on LinkedIn. And it also seems to be more demographically focused than LinkedIn, where LinkedIn, you have people of all ages in there and engaging on there. This will skew younger in there. But I put it in the easy or in the green area on the degree of difficulty, mainly because unlike Twitter, you don't need to be quite as aggressive with posting. It's much more similar, I think, to LinkedIn in that regard. And you may find it different. This is just, I'm sharing my impressions after working with some of these over the years, but I would put this one in the green. So if we were going to do a couple things, LinkedIn and Facebook, as it's almost hand in hand. If you're going to do one, do the other two. Just be cognizant on this platform if you're venturing into areas that may draw negative engagement in there. Okay, blog. Our blog, Emerson Automation Experts, been around for a really long time. It's really good for being able to increase awareness around whether it's products, services, solutions, your people. Depending on how you do the blog, it can be a spot for thought leadership and reputation, increasing the visibility of your talent. And that's primarily how we're using it, to lift the visibility of all the experts that we have across the company. And it can also increase budget efficiency, not in human manpower terms, but in you can spin up a blog with open source WordPress software on a Linux platform and be off and running very quickly on something like that. Or there are services of companies available to manage some of that in there, but it's pretty efficient in terms of it. The big pros for blogs: they're highly optimized for search just by the nature of the URLs that get created, other parts of it. And they can help drive your search engine optimization with the main website. If you're talking about some of your products and linking to specific areas or data sheets or whatever, those inbound links can help with lifting you up in the search engine rankings. They're also very good for more conversational style than you would find on your website, where your website might be much more factual, to the point. A blog can be much more conversational, reflect the personalities of the people that may be writing the posts. You just have a lot more flexibility in there. Also, with popular platforms like WordPress, they couple very well with podcasting, and it can be used to do that syndication and get that podcast over to Apple Podcast, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, all the popular podcast players out there. And one of the biggest benefits is, on all these others that I mentioned for free, we could all get the rug pulled tomorrow, where they stop it, they turn it off, you're not on your home base. So a blog allows you to have a home base, much like your website, instead of trusting everything to a third party that you hope doesn't change or go away or take away what you have. Now, on the con site, And I will say, creating content, maybe second only to video and I guess podcasts. Someone's got to write the posts and edit it and get it all ready and publish it and everything else. It requires a steady flow. It's not like your website that may be more project-based and you update every once in a while. You want to keep the flow going. It could be you only post once a week or even every other week, or it could be something you're posting daily, but you want that consistent and persistent flow, and you just got to plan and budget for that. And for that reason, I moved it into the red category, because compared to some of the others, a lot of work. But also a good thing is you can use your LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and whatever else you have to promote the blog posts that you do, in addition to maybe email and other communications that you have. And the final thing, it is a separate website, so it requires maintenance on the operating system, the updates, the software versions, if you're using WordPress, and it has themes and plugins and different parts in there. So there's an element of maintaining it. Again, there's some services, like we use a service that'll take care of the operating system and all the patches and that kind of thing in there. But we're still responsible for the versions, themes, plugins, and keeping those up to date. So that's blogs in there. Online communities, I think, are one of the best ways to improve either customer service and also loyalty. These communities can be used for customer service, or like we have one, Emerson Exchange 365, that's much more about peer-to-peer knowledge sharing. So that really helps with loyalty as customers connect with other customers and our experts all in a community, posting questions, answering those questions, and also building this big digital footprint that is highly searchable, so that others encountering something similar can basically self-help finding it through that way. And that may help you with your customer support, service costs and other things. And also, it's a great way for the product managers and other people to get feedback. What's working well? What are people complaining about? Whatever else. Communities are really good for that. So some of the pros, very findable as these threads are developed, questions answered, that kind of thing, all crawled by the search engines. That feedback can really help optimize and improve, whether it's your services or product designs or whatever else. Also, you'll find that your very best marketing efforts may be one customer advocating something to another customer, and they have the credibility of actually hands-on experience with it and being able to do that. So that's something we find is very powerful, and really way more powerful than anything a marketing person can do. One customer advocating to another is probably the most powerful form of marketing. The cons are it does require a higher level of monitoring and engagement by community managers, just to make sure everything's going okay in there and isn't getting out of control. The other thing is it does require patience and a while to get it self-sustaining in there. So continual flow of content and promotional efforts to attract people in there. And I put in there, I've heard this rule of thumb many times. If you have 100 people in a community, 90 will be in lurk only mode. They'll just read, follow what's going on, but never post anything. Another 9% may be your occasional people once in a while reach out to there. And then there, 1 in 100 will be that active person involved in every thread, have the answer, pull in people, be your really aggressive person. So, just based on those numbers, you really need to build that community into the thousands or even tens of thousands to really have that self-sustaining activity where it's more customers talking to other customers, or if it's a customer support thing, to your experts in there. So that's something you got to be aware of. And there are some free communities, but you'll find most companies with online communities usually pay for a platform, a software as a service. And in fact, that's what we do here to provide that ongoing support and continuous upgrades and ways to do it, because you need people that spammers are going to try to get in there, and others, and needing that constant improvements to be able to stay a step ahead of them. So because of all those reasons and everything, and really trying to grow it out, this is a difficult thing to do, but the value can be tremendous in terms of that self-support through this large digital footprint that gets built, and that advocacy of customer to customer in there. That can be a very powerful thing. Okay, I mentioned podcasts in the blog, but this is really good for the customer service and loyalty, and it's probably the best of the storytelling platforms, that if you structure it in a way to share whatever that is, because storytelling, there's no visual to go with it, so the picture has to be painted in the mind based on the stories that are told. So it's very good, and that storytelling could be in learning about new concepts, or even later in the buyer's journey where they actually have the product, storytelling about the applications and how you might use it and what it's best for, those kind of things. And it's also something that builds a digital footprint, especially like in our case, we'll transcribe what's in there. So it's very natural language, and getting the words as part of it. And you'll find that people will engage with podcasts and offer a higher level of comments. Say if you post about it in LinkedIn on your company page, you tend to get, like video, much more engagement and feedback than you do with the written word. One of the strongest pros, it fills in those gaps from other forms of communication. So people may listen during their drive time or exercise or household chores or whatever else. So it's kind of that multitasking, being able to fill in and catch it. And I know I personally listen to podcasts on my commute to and from the office. And it opens new communication paths, because now they may find you in their Google podcast player or Apple podcast or whatever their favorite podcast player, and never have to come to visit your website or blog, or maybe that's their first entry point. So there's more paths that you may not have had. And I think it really does complement blog posts and well tied. So when we do a podcast, it gets posted as a blog post, and it syndicates out to all those popular podcast players in there. Like video, it's more difficult to create than the written word, and other forms in there usually requires you've got to do a good job of recording it. Then it's tough to fix in post-production, so you got to be right up front. And then like video, it requires post-production to clean up and have ready to go. So there's work that goes into it, and the whole process of figuring out the questions that you're going to ask your expert and going through the recording, the post-production, getting it ready for posting. There's a lot of steps that it takes in there. So as a result, it's out there in the red area of it, like some of the other interactive media that's in there. Okay, we're starting to wind down to some of the last, and this is more on the maturity scale, probably something you don't start with, but something that is valuable, and that's employee advocacy. And there's platforms that help you deal with that. Basically what it is having a curator or group of curators identify and content and make it available for the people that you want to share it to be able to share it. So that could be your company news, your news about the industries you serve, trends, other things going on there. Because you might find it important that you want your experts out there communicating. But if it's very time consuming and difficult for them to find things to be able to share, say with their LinkedIn connections, they may not be as willing to do it. But if you have a team that can find that information, make it available, and even have these experts, as they come across things, suggest it to be for others to be able to share it, then you have this platform that can do it. So, a lot of the things we've seen that can help drive people's personal brands as they're sharing things with their LinkedIn connections, or if they're in Twitter, their Twitter connections. It can increase the visibility of content, because people tend to engage in social more with people than they do with brands. So if you have your LinkedIn company page, you may get people coming and going, but it won't be near as high as communicating through your people. And these platforms, some are free. Like if you go to your LinkedIn company page, there's actually an employee tab or news of who's getting promoted and all that they can share. So it ranges from free to there are companies that have a platform and may integrate it with what your employees communicate with your brand communications and what they communicate. So on the pro side, you can get much more reach and engagement going out, having your people share things than just communicating through your brand social channels. A lot of the things that you create can get shared in other platforms, and the analytics where you may have had no visibility. If people are sharing things in LinkedIn, only they have visibility to what their reach and what kind of engagement it's had and everything else. If you use one of these platforms, then your people managing the program can get some analytics on what's working the best, who's sharing the most, and that kind of thing. And you can use that to spur people on to do more. There are cons to it. It's something else for your experts to do, and even finding curators to find that good content and keep it going for people to share it. You need the people side of it in there. And as you work with your people, requiring ongoing motivation and encouragement to keep the employees active is important. And finally, unless you're using what LinkedIn has freely available, if you use one of these platforms out there, it does require annual budget expenses to be able to do it. So overall, I put it in the red just because of that curation, and then motivating your employees to continue to use it. But it can be very powerful that what you see is the content they are sharing gets much higher engagement. More people look at it, or comment on it or reshare it or whatever else. So it can be a very important amplification to everything else that's going on. Okay, let's wind down with just a couple tips I have. If you're going to get your employees more engaged with it, they need to follow good practices. In our case, we developed a full curriculum and we train people on the do's and don'ts, the whys, and everything else. If we boil it down to simple rules that we share with them, is be transparent. Don't try to pretend to be someone that you're not. Be responsive if you're out there and people are commenting on some of the things that you're sharing. Make sure you stay engaged with that. And 3, be engaging, be an expert. We look at our people have expertise in all sorts of different areas, and we want them not to be a machine just to push out company news, but be engaging, be an expert in their expertise area. Follow the rules. The same thing that applies to a lot of other form of communications apply to communications and social. So financial disclosure and intellectual property and a number of different things in there. Got to follow the rules. And finally, don't be a troll, be respectful in there. So in how you engage, make sure it's something you wouldn't mind sharing what you did with your boss or with your family members. Be respectful in all you do. So those are some simple rules that we share with our folks. The other thing is, if we're going to manage these channels, having a content calendar really helps with keeping the efforts sustainable. And it could be as simple as a spreadsheet and with some dates. What is it we want to say? What's the picture associated with it? Are there specific hashtags that would help give it greater visibility and the URL? So we have a number of these for some of the ongoing programs, specific campaigns that we run, events that we're planning for. And it's just a way, especially when you're collaborating, maybe it's different people providing the images, the social copy that's going to go into the post, who's organizing it, having an area in there. So instead of just showing up trying to figure out what you want to say for that day, the more you can put it into a plan, that really helps with being persistent and consistent and getting it out there. So highly recommend you do this. Some of the measures of success, and we're winding it down, it can be sales opportunities sent to your sales funnel from different ways that people may come in. We've seen it from comments to a blog post or a company post. Excuse me. The support engagements that could be avoided in there. You may measure how much your support organization was addressing things before and after, like if you add a support community. Simple metrics like growth and followers. Are you growing? Are you stagnating? The views of what is being seen in there. And then the engagement, that people actually click through to the content that you're sharing in there, or just liking what you posted on your company page, or commenting on it, or resharing it with their connections. So all those are things that you can measure and look for positive trends in there. And then there's even some services that'll help with your share of voice versus how are your competitors doing, and maybe focusing that around some of your strategic initiatives as a company. So there's some listening tools that we really haven't addressed today, but that can help you. And are you gaining share of voice versus the other guys, or are you not? So number of those you can use in ways to measure. There's probably numerous other ways, but those are some of the key ones. So let's wrap it up with this last one, taking your path forward to either starting or maybe advancing what you're doing. You know, it starts with those objectives, the business objectives, finding your target audience, really understanding who they are, because that'll help determine the mix of what you have. Putting together your strategy so that can be reinforcing and repeated to everyone who is participating as part of this, so they clearly understand what you're trying to do there. And then decide if, you know, you're going to manage this with somebody in-house or get some help through an agency. And even going through an agency, you have to have someone in your organization project managing, but they may be able to help with some of the content production and other parts in there. So got to get that clearly identified. And then based on some of those measures, establish some key performance indicators and use that to track. Is it getting better? Is it stagnating? Is it going downhill? Whatever, so you can course correct for that. And when it comes to that content, you want to focus for the people you're trying to reach. How much do they care about it? And the good news is, by tracking, are they clicking through to the links? Are they doing other things? You can kind of measure along the way and help focus the things you're developing and getting the feedback to be able to reach them. And I think it's important to see, based on that target audience, what's currently available that they are already seeing, and is there a niche that you can provide that can't be provided through other means in there. And then with all that, just continual monitoring to see, are we growing? Are people engaging with the things that we are sharing? Are we getting the interactions? And you want to celebrate when things are going well, and feedback to everybody that's involved in the process to continue to foster the growth and everything else in there. So I hope I've given you a couple things to at least consider in adding or starting afresh in there. There's a lot of opportunity that you can do through social that you just don't have the ability in a lot of the other communications. While a lot of the platforms come for free, the effort and energy needs to be there in your organization, or even starting with a single person, to be able to drive that forward. So if that part's not in place, then it's hard to do much of this. But in the end, it's a medium that I think can complement a lot of the other forms of communication you're doing. Now, I'll be available for the live Q&A at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 17th. So if there was anything in here that you want to ask me about, please bring your questions to that session, and I look forward to speaking with you. So thank you all very much for your time today.